Not a problem. So next up, we're covering Daft Punk and their debut album, Homework. In the opening montage, you heard Around the World, and now you're going to hear The Funk. Okay, Matt, what are the numbers?
Homework by Daft Punk comes in at number 142 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 17 in 1997, number 797 of all time. It's Daft Punk's third highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind 2013's Random Access Memories and 2001's Discovery. Homework did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Daft Punk ranked number 98 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
Wow, high overall artist ranking for them.
And one of the few French artists that we've...
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we can probably name all the French artists on one hand that we've covered. This album came out March 25th, 1997 in the U.S. They are a French electronic duo. They formed in Paris in 1993. Their names are Thomas Bangalter and Guy Manuel de Homen Christo. They only have 4 albums total. This is their debut. Genres are French house, electronic, dance, techno, disco, all the different electronic variations. Influences, they said Primal Scream, that album that we covered, Screamadelica, was influential, they said. Andy Warhol, the artist, multi-hyphenate, George Clinton, Dr. Dre. Many of the people on that track, Teachers, are people that they cited as influences, so you could just listen to that song too. Aphex Twin as well. Similar artists, Basement Jaxx, Orbital, who we've covered, Moby, Chemical Brothers, Fatboy Slim, LCD Sound System. Their song Starboy with The Weeknd was technically their number 1 song on the Billboard Hot 100, but Get Lucky off of Random Access Memories, a song that I think everyone knows, reached number 2. And their 2013 album Random Access Memories was number 1 for 2 weeks on the Billboard 200. Some fun facts: their original band was called Darlin with a apostrophe at the end, no G, and which featured Laurent Brankowitz on guitar and vocals. And then that band disbanded after 6 months, and Brankowitz went on to form Phoenix, the other French band that probably people know. Their name was taken from a negative review of their first band, Darlin, and Melody Maker by Dave Jennings, who dubbed their music a daft punky thrash. And so then they really liked that Daft Punk part and took it. Their second album, Discovery, saw them debut their distinctive robot costumes that they use for all public appearances going forward. Previously, they wore Halloween masks or bags over their heads. And in regards to their costumes, Bangalter likened their robot personas to, quote, like a Marina Abramovich performance art installation that lasted for 20 years, quote. And he denied the robots. I never thought about this, but I guess it's interesting. He denied that the robots represented an unquestioning embrace of digital culture, unquote. He said, quote, we tried to use these machines to express something extremely moving that a machine cannot feel, but a human can. We are always on the side of humanity and not on the side of technology. So I guess people took it to mean that they wanted to be robots. Who knows? People misinterpret things frequently, I am finding. And they announced their disbandment in February 2021. And no official reason, but one of their friends said that they were just going in different directions artistically. So no bad blood there. I think they set out what they were trying to do ultimately, and succeeded over the course of 4 albums. So that's all I had. Let's start with John. What did you think of Homework?
Never has an album title lined up more with like my first take of what it, so I was very much interested to see how I would respond to Daft Punk, because I've never sought them out, and when they've come on, I have had a completely neutral reaction to them, I'd say. I think my take is wildly similar to what my take was coming into this, even though we listened to over an hour worth of what Daft Punk was, in that I think of them as Kraftwerk inspired. I would say for sure. I feel like Kraftwerk and a little bit of the dance music that we listened to in the 80s, right, would be the biggest influences, because they took dance music in a slightly different direction. That's a cousin of all the different formats we had before, but they have a very identifiable sound, Daft Punk. In some ways, they can be considered to be the rightful inheritor, I think, of krautrock, I think, but for the 90s, I don't feel anything when I listen to Daft Punk at all. It very much feels mathematical to me, is how I describe it. And it was a weird experience for me, as we talked about before. Like, an hour and 20 minutes of like any album is too much, but this was just sort of, it's odd to me that someone could listen to this and be moved in 80 minutes of listening to this album. And that's not even a knock on it. It's just, it doesn't strike me as like music you listen to for 80 minutes, right? In any format outside of maybe like a dance club. Or I guess if you're interested in sound and production, then maybe I could see how you do. But as just someone who is a listener of music as a fan, so to speak, or processing it from an enjoyment aesthetic standpoint, it's just such a neutral type of music for me, and that I don't hate it. But there also is nothing about it that moves things forward for me, would be the best way I'd describe it. And that's why it was homework a little bit, because I listened to this 3 times this week to try to see if there was a different context. And each time, why it was like homework was, it was 80 minutes, so it was long, right? It's a very much a time commitment to give this. And I feel almost anything would be better in a 40-minute format, but man, this type of music really would benefit from being more like 40 to 45 minutes, maybe even like 30 as a digestible element for me, than comfortably over an hour. And also, I just kept waiting for a hook or a song or a version of one of the tracks that would really connect with me emotionally, and it didn't. I always stayed in sort of a cognitive lane of processing this. It doesn't even really make me like move physically like I would expect dance music to do. Like it's hard to explain, because I both process it as dance music, but there is nothing that sways me, even like a good bass line or drum part, right, in a song that's not dance music would do for me. So in that sense, it's sort of similar to the concept of math rock that we talked about before, where it's like it's more interesting to me as a lineage or a piece of the musical puzzle than it is for me to actually listen to it, if that makes sense. I always found it really weird that these guys also did Phoenix, like the band, because the band Phoenix was a lot more tuneful in some ways to me. It kind of evolved their music to have a little bit of I wouldn't say I have an emotional connection with Phoenix, but there was at least a little bit of evocativeness to some of their tracks. But this is, it's not cold, it's not sterile like some dance music is that doesn't make me move, but it's also not, like as Matt has talked about sometimes, like music that would be best if you were on drugs. Like, I don't think this music would make a huge difference to me if I was on drugs, as I was listening to it. I mean, maybe like in a club setting, but I don't know if I'm doing a good job, guys, because I'm truly baffled a little bit by Daft Punk, because they might be the single most neutral band, collective, artist that I can think of in all of the 800 plus albums that we've covered, in which I truly have like no opinion of them, good or bad. It just exists in like,
we found the middle
a
point.
purgatory, like a blank space, right, of which no strong opinions emanate. And that was such a weird spot for me to be in, especially on a show in which we're giving our take on things. And I spent a lot of time trying to like synthesize down what would be my take, or sometimes I think about like, what's the angle of how my
Yeah.
my piece is going to be like, what am I going to tie in as the main theme? Because at the end of the day, I was an English teacher, right? And you're always writing your opening topic paragraph and bringing it together. This was one of the hardest albums for me to do that for. So I'm curious as to what you guys think about this one.
Just to clean a stack real quick, though, these guys were not in Phoenix, just a member of their band.
They weren't. Okay.
Their first band formed Phoenix. He left.
Okay. I knew there was a connection to Phoenix. I didn't. Okay. Gotcha. So that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
They were always, the two of them were always just Daft Punk.
Got it. Okay.
So I became aware of Daft Punk in 2000, I think, when their second it's their second
Discovery.
album.
Yeah.
When Discovery came out, because that I remember the songs from that being on the rate.
That is One More Time and not Around the World, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember whatever I remember hearing more of them, and I also remember like starting to be exposed to other music magazines, like Q, right? Some of the British magazines, and I remember them being very much in the press. And so they always struck me as kind of like this, man, this is a cool band. They're mysterious, right? Because they're wearing the robot costumes, and they always got like high praise, and certainly they became big in the electronic / dance, club, scene, which was very popular at the time. It still wasn't something that I was, that familiar with that into, but I do remember them being, thinking about them big, man, this seems like a cool band, like a band that I should know more about. And my take is not terribly different than John's. It's maybe a little bit more of a mixed bag, because I wouldn't say that I loved this record. I think that there's elements of it that are very catchy, and I can see like, man, that seems like I totally get why that's a popular song, or a song that people could play want to hear on a dance club or at a rave or whatever, because there's some really catchy stuff in here. The songs that Josh picked, the two big ones here, Defunct and Around the World, are just like have some really infectious, catchy elements to it that as soon as they really kick in with the main hook, it draws me in immediately, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of other songs on here that do that. I really like the way that it begins with Daft and Deer Kick, whatever the name of that pronunciation is, which again, probably maybe that's a play off of like Krautrock or whatever. Daft and Drek?
Yeah, Direct.
Direct. But they kind of like take this, and they've done it several times. They do it several times in the album where they kind of, the production, it's almost like it's kind of done in a way that it's like the music's coming at you as if you're from underwater. So it's this like muted kind of, it's hard to kind of really figure out the finer points of the song. It's kind of more muffled, but then they slowly bring it to like this much clearer sound, and you can kind of make out kind of what they're saying a little bit more, and then they bring it back down. So they play around with stuff like that, which doesn't bother me. I think it's kind of interesting. And I don't think that they overdo that. So I will say that's kind of an interesting thing that they do. Some of the beats are great. Some of the melodies are great. And then track 8 hit, right? So I was pretty much okay with this up through track 7, Around the World, and from track 8 for the rest, it's almost like half the album really started to grate on me, because then they started making some choices that were more harsh. There was like a harsher sound, and some of it, like they lost some of that, the grooves and the melodies that I liked in the first part of the album. Rollin' and Scratchin' had this kind of, I think I might have liked that, but they just took this effect
really
to such
high.
a screeching sound, and it just got higher and higher and louder, and it was just, there were times where I was listening to this more intently and other times where I had it more in the background, and both times I just found myself like turning the volume down and going like, is this over yet? And then you're like, shit, this is a 7.5 minute long song. It's going to just keep going, and it doesn't really, change, right? And then it goes into Teachers, which it didn't really do much for me, nor did, High Fidelity was okay. Rock and Roll did it even worse. There was really no melody there. That was really almost like a art, like let's just, it's almost like that song was designed to let's see how long we can do this before someone turns the song to skips the next one, because it was just so I found very little redeemable quality from that song. And yeah, Burnin', Indo Silver Club. Now, Alive, I liked. I liked the penultimate song. I thought that was a little bit more pleasant to my ears. So I think for half of this album, the reaction was more of, okay, this is good. It's got some good melodies, got some beats and stuff like that I can connect with. Not on like an otherworldly level. Like, it's interesting because earlier this week I just had my playlist on my master playlist on shuffle, and a Cut Copy song came on, and that's like another kind of band that's, I don't know if we're ever going to cover them or not. They weren't that huge, but like that there was a song that could totally be played at a club, right? And it was like from the get-go, I was in it, I was dancing, I was like, this is like feeling it, and I'm like. So it's not so much like I don't like dance music. It's just like there's an element of this that is a little sterile, I think, and particularly if they're not really honing in on some of those more melodic tendencies that they can do and do a pretty good job at. It really loses me. In some places, it's just like, I hate what they're doing here right now. So the listening experience of this record, which John's right, it is like many other albums from this time, it is too long. And I think particularly the second half was a real slog for me to get through. I think generally if the music's going to be more like the front half of this record, I think I'm fine with it. It's fine being in the background, but it's not something that really like I want to sink my teeth into or really, seek out or play more, right? It's just kind of like there's plenty of other music that we've covered and that we still will cover that scratches the itch of having like dance music that's going to connect with me more. This version of this electronic sound is just I don't know. I know people love it. I see, again, the comments on YouTube when I was listening to it on YouTube, people talking about the earth-shattering, like groundbreaking, like moment that they first heard this and it exposed them to this world of electronic music that just they've never turned away from. And this is hands down one of the greatest albums of all time. And I'm just like, well, I don't know, man. I am not that target market, that audience. So, this is not something that I would recommend to people. It's certainly, I guess if people are really into, electronic music and rave culture and all that stuff, I would say, well, you probably should check out Daft Punk, but it's not my thing, it'd kind of just be like more of that kind of recommendation, but I can't see myself really regularly putting this on. I could probably take one or two or three songs from this, put them on that master playlist that I have, and it would pop up here and there, and it would be, oh, that's a nice like palette cleanser. It's a nice version of this type of genre that this is the way that they can do it to make me like it a little bit more. But listening to a full album of this, or just like it really kind of branching out and trying to find out how Daft Punk influenced all these other artists and getting into those. No, I'm not doing that. Yeah. So it's kind of, it's because of all of that. It's kind of just thumbs down for me, at least in this version. We'll probably I'm sure we'll cover the other two highly regarded records that they have. Maybe I'll feel differently about them, but this one, particularly the second half, was really difficult for me to get through.
I think I'm a little bit higher on this album than you guys are, just for the fact that it feels like more accessible electronic music. I think the key being, thinking about the other electronic music that we've talked about, it runs the gamut from being like very experimental, like Orbital or Oval, right? Or the other band, damn it, I can't think of their name. Anyway, Audiker, and then we've got like, I feel like this is more in line with like DJ Shadow in some ways. Like it's sample based, but I think at the end of the day, and it is experimental, but I feel like at the end of the day, it's like dance like focused in mind. And I feel like the steady beats really just did a lot for me in terms of enjoyment of this album. Like I agree with you, Matt. I think the first half is more enjoyable and stronger than the second half, and I found that more memorable too, in my listening. So I think that's a valid point. But I found myself constantly nodding my head, like just to the beat and like moving, and like I think that's what it was designed to do, and I think it succeeded in that front in terms of making me want to dance and like somehow like subconsciously like making my body move even when I was just like sitting at the computer listening. And I do think there's some fun things that they do in this. They are a sample, they are a sample based band, but they do sampling in such like in the same way that DJ Shadow like kind of stretched and redefined what sampling is. I think Daft Punk has also done that, and I do feel like this is some sort of departure from the electronic music. I feel like in some ways I think they combined the electronic music and the dance music in a new way that's kind of hard to define, and that it kind of changed things. I'm still kind of working on that theory, but I do feel like it's not as like breakbeat focused, and it's not as like druggy, I guess, or like frenetic in some ways. I think the steady beat, like metronomic thing, maybe that's what John, somebody said sterile or kind of, I think that's there for sure, but I think like the metronomic beat like just really like works for me. I think I'm really like a tribal like drum beat bass beat heavy like type of person, and so that worked for me overall. I think the band too evolves, even though they only have 4 albums. I think they do different things on the other albums, so I am curious as to kind of how they change. I do feel like this is a little mathematical at times on this album. I agree with you, Matt. I do like some of the interesting audio things that they do with this, especially on a song like Fresh, where you have like the waves going in the background, and the song like with the waves like goes from ear to ear in the headphones and changes. That's really cool. Like I think it makes it worth listening to on headphones for me. And I just like some of the hooks or samples that they use like around the world. I just found myself singing that over and over again throughout the day.
It does stick in your head.
Yes. So I think that earworm quality does work on some of these songs, and I like just repeating parts of these songs. So in that respect, I like the album, but I totally get why this wouldn't work for somebody. And I'm not even saying like Daft Punk is probably best used on like the dance floor or just like one song in a playlist versus like a whole entire album. I think that can wear you down, and I think you can understand what they're about in less time than listening to this entire album. But I think there is some good quality here, and I enjoyed it. So I'm going to give it a mild thumbs up this week.
Yeah, and I think another reason why maybe the second half didn't stand out as much as the first, it's most of the songs just have a dun dun dun. Right. Like there is a steady beat. It's kind of the same pattern throughout the whole record, and it's very prominent because it's just the main part of the song. And so it's almost like, okay, like just enough, and I've had enough of that beat. Like that starts to wear on me a little bit, and I think that was another problem. It's just it's definitely a barrier of entry to me for prolonged exposure to this type of music. Yeah,
I do wonder if like since this is their debut album, if they kind of mature or figure out, kind of
we're going to be revisiting them.
Yeah, so maybe that will be different experience. Because those other songs on Discovery do sound different, and those are kind of like bigger hits than what was on here. And I think
they have Random Access Memories. Isn't that another big one for them?
Get Lucky.
Yeah, Get Lucky's on that one.
Yep.
So I think they do become more like, Discovery is more like disco, maybe in some way, disco inflected. So I'll be interested to see what the difference is.
Okay. I think it's me next.
It is you next.
It is me next.